It's funny. Most great ideas, they pass all the early tests, right? They're strategic, they're affordable, commercially viable, all the boxes get ticked. But here's the thing. That's no guarantee of success, not even close. The most critical question, the one that really matters, is often the last one we ask. Can we actually pull this off? And that, right there, is the heart of the management case. It's the final gatekeeper between a brilliant idea on paper and a successful reality. So let's dive in and break down exactly how it works. All right, so here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll look at why the management case is this final gate for any big project. Then we'll get into the 3 professional lenses you need to look through to get execution right. We'll also tackle the big reasons projects fail and how this whole framework helps build resilience. And to wrap it all up, we'll connect the dots and see how a great strategy actually turns into real-world action. Okay, let's get right into it with this idea of the final gate. I want you to think of it like the last line of defense. It's the bouncer at the door that stops those well-intentioned but honestly poorly planned projects from getting through. This is the moment we stop dreaming about the what and get dead serious about the how. So to really get this, let's just quickly remember the other cases in the model. You've got the strategic case, that's the why should we even do this? Then the economic case, is it good value for money? And of course the commercial and financial cases, can we sell it and can we afford it? See, all of those are focused on the what and the why. The management case, well, this is the real game changer. It flips the script and forces us to look squarely at the how. And this image here, it just perfectly captures the whole sequence, doesn't it? Each case is a building block, one on top of the other. But look at that final, golden piece, the management case. You can literally have the most brilliant, fully funded, world-changing idea, and it can still completely fall apart. Why? The reason is so simple, but it's also incredibly profound. A great idea is just not the same thing as a well-executed project. So really, it all boils down to this one simple, direct question. And it's an incredibly powerful one. I want you to think about your own organization, your own projects, and honestly ask yourself this. Can we actually do this? Can we deliver and manage this thing successfully? Because, and this is the uncomfortable truth, most projects don't fail because the strategy was bad. Nope. They fail because the execution just completely fell apart. And that's where the real power of the management case comes in. See, it's not just another review meeting, it's a total transformation. It takes something that's just an approved investment, an idea with money, and turns it into an executable delivery, a real plan. It's all about the discipline of building the engine, the structures, the systems, the people watching over it, before you even think about putting the key in the ignition. Okay, so how do we actually build that engine, right? Well, the great thing about the management case is that it doesn't just leave it up to chance or guesswork. It gives us a solid framework for checking our readiness, and it does that by looking at the problem through 3 very distinct professional lenses. To figure out if we're truly ready, the case basically forces us to ask 5 pretty tough questions. Like, first off, is this plan even credible? Seriously? Next, does everyone know who's in charge? Who makes the calls? Third, do we have a real system for handling risk, or are we just crossing our fingers? Then, how are we going to track progress honestly? No sugarcoating. And maybe the most important one of all, how do we make absolutely sure we get the benefits we're shelling out all this money for? On this slide, oh man, this highlights a distinction that trips up so many projects. It's like a little dialogue, right? The financial case steps up and says, yep, we've got the money. But then the management case fires right back. That's great, but do you have the plan, the people, the systems to actually deliver? See, just having the money is never enough. Success only happens when your wallet is matched by your capability. It's as simple as that. And this is exactly where those 3 professional lenses we talked about come into play. What the management case does so cleverly is it weaves together the disciplines from 3 totally different but crucial areas. You've got governance, supplier management, and pure project delivery. Together, they form this super powerful trio that ensures any big investment is governable, controllable, and most importantly, executable. So let's break down each one. First up, we've got the CIPFA lens. The easiest way to think about this one, it's the corporate conscience of the project. It's all about governance and accountability. It's the part that sets the rules of the game. Who makes the decisions, who's watching over things, how we report back. This is what stops money from just disappearing and makes sure everyone knows exactly who is responsible for what. All right, next up, we bring in the CIPS lens. Now, let's be real. Most huge projects rely on a ton of outside suppliers, right? So this perspective is absolutely critical. It's all about managing those contracts and those supplier relationships. It's about holding your partners accountable and making dead certain they deliver what they promised. Put simply, CIPS is all about supplier accountability, from day one all the way to the end.
And finally, we've got the PMI perspective. This is all about structured delivery discipline. If CIPFA is the conscience, PMI is the engine room of execution. It brings the hardcore mechanics, structured governance, plans that actually link together, formal risk management, and disciplined change control. These are the systems that allow an organization to take on something incredibly complex and manage it with real confidence and control.
So now that we have a feel for these three different disciplines, we can start to see how they all lock together. They build this kind of bridge, taking a project from a place of high risk to one of real resilience. A bridge that helps it get over the most common and, frankly, the most dangerous pitfalls out there. And this image? Wow. It really brings home what we call the execution abyss. This is the graveyard of good intentions. It's where countless, well-funded, strategically brilliant projects go to die. And they're always killed by the same predictable assassins. Weak governance, not having the right people, scope creep, terrible monitoring, and suppliers who just don't deliver. The real tragedy? They fail right here, after the money's been approved, but before a single person has seen a single benefit. So the question is, how do you get across that chasm? You build a bridge. And as you can see right here, that bridge stands on the three strong pillars we've been talking about. PMI provides the structure and the plan. CIPFA brings the oversight and the accountability, and CIPS locks down that supplier performance. It is this powerful combination that creates what we call genuine delivery resilience. If you want to see this in the real world, just look at Toyota. Everyone knows about the Toyota production system, right? It's an absolute masterclass in disciplined delivery. And it's not just about a clever strategy. It's all about the execution systems they've built. We can see our three lenses at work here perfectly. Ironclad governance discipline, a masterful way of managing their whole supplier ecosystem, and just a world-class system for operational execution. It proves the point. Strategy only succeeds when your execution systems are rock solid. Now, let's contrast that with a massive public project, something like London's Crossrail, which is now the Elizabeth Line. The sheer complexity of that thing was just staggering. We're talking about coordinating dozens of huge contractors, managing literally thousands of moving parts, all while navigating enormous risk. It's such a powerful lesson, isn't it? For these mega programs to have any chance of success, the strength of your governance has to match the massive scale of the challenge. And all of this brings us to our final section, pulling it all together. This is where we see how the management case makes that last crucial connection, turning those high-level strategic goals into real, tangible, successful results on the ground. So to make that final connection happen, the management case has a specific toolkit it uses. We're talking about things like stage gate reviews, which are really just formal go or no-go decision points along the way, or benefits realization plans, which is a fancy way of saying a plan to track whether we're actually getting what we paid for. Look, these aren't just corporate buzzwords. They are the actual gears and levers that turn a big, lofty strategy into a well-managed reality. So let's leave it all with this one core idea. The management case is what makes sure an investment isn't just a good idea, but a deliverable one. Because at the end of the day, without execution, the best strategy in the world is just a dream. So I want you to remember this triad. Strategy defines your direction. Governance ensures your discipline. But it's execution that actually delivers the results. And that is why the management case stands as the final and, without a doubt, the most critical gate to success.
Let's now revisit the same logic from a slightly different perspective to reinforce how the management case turns strategy into...
Welcome back. All right, we are at the finish line of our deep dive into the UK Treasury's 5-case model. We've talked strategy, we've proven the value, structured the deal, and we've even lined up the funds. But now? Well, now we face the ultimate test, the management case. This is where the rubber meets the road. It's where we prove a project isn't just a great idea on paper, but something we can actually build, pulling in top-tier standards to guarantee we can get it done. Let's get into it. So think about it. You've done all that hard work. You've got a killer strategic case. The economic value is crystal clear. The commercial deal, it's solid. And the funding is all signed off. You think you're ready to go, right? But there is one giant lingering question. And there it is. Can your organization actually pull this off? Can you deliver on every single promise you made in those first 4 cases? This single question is what the management case is all about. It shifts us completely from just talking about the plan to talking about pure, raw execution.
People often call the management case a bridge, and you can really see why right here. It's what connects that high-level policy intent, the big idea, with the messy, on-the-ground operational reality. This isn't just wishful thinking. It's the ultimate achievability test. It's about giving investors and stakeholders real confidence that this thing can actually happen.
So let's kick things off with that idea right there, the achievability test. We're making a huge shift here, away from just justifying the project to providing concrete assurance that, yes, we have what it takes to make it a success.
So how does this test actually work? Well, it starts with that big fundamental question. Can we really deliver? And the answer can't just be a shrug and yeah, we think so. It has to be backed by a rock-solid evidence base. And that's your project management plan. This isn't just a stack of papers. It's the proof that gives stakeholders the confidence they need to invest serious money, whether it's from the public purse or private capital.
All right, so with that test in mind, let's move on. Now we have to actually design the engine of the project. We call this the execution blueprint. This is where we get into the nuts and bolts, the real architecture of how the work is going to get done, from who's in charge to how we're going to do it. You know, project success really starts with solid governance. You've got to architect it properly. What you're looking at here is what's called the golden thread of authority. Right at the top, you need a single point of accountability, a senior responsible owner, or SRO. That's the one person whose neck is on the line. No confusion. And from that SRO, you need a clear structure where the project management office, the PMO, acts as the single source of truth for all reporting. Everybody works from the same playbook. The blueprint also has to spell out how we're going to work. First, what's our methodology? Are we doing a classic step-by-step waterfall project? Or is it more iterative, something suited for agile, or maybe a hybrid? We have to justify that choice. Then we use tools like critical path analysis to map everything out. And crucially, we optimize our resources to make sure we have the right people at the right time. The secret sauce here is setting up tolerance frameworks for time, cost, and quality before you even start. That way, if things start to drift, alarms go off automatically. Okay, the blueprint is designed, but we all know that no plan survives first contact with reality, right? So this section is all about moving from that static plan on paper to dynamic action in a live environment where things happen.
You know, one of the biggest project killers is what we call the handover gap. That's where a perfectly good commercial deal just falls apart during delivery. To stop that, we have to think about the entire life cycle. This isn't just about managing a contract. It's strategic supplier relationship management. We use things like KPIs and SLAs not as a stick to beat suppliers with, but as a real-time dashboard to keep everything on track and protect that value for money we worked so hard to define. Now, let's talk about risk. A risk register isn't some document you create on day one and then stick in a drawer. It has to be a live, breathing, strategic tool. We need to move from just listing risks to active risk ownership. Every single threat needs a mitigation plan, a budget, and a person who's responsible for it. We also need to run drills, scenario testing for those wild, high-impact black swan events to make sure our project can take a punch.
Okay, so the project is delivered. High fives all around. We're done, right? Nope, not even close. Now comes the hard part, proving that it has lasting value and leaves the legacy we intended. Honestly, the most brilliant project in the world is a total failure if nobody uses it. That's why you have to manage the human element. You need real change management to get the organization ready. And that's where something called a benefits realization plan comes in. We also have to do post-implementation reviews to see if the actual results match the ROI we promised way back in the economic case. It's about making the change stick. Let's just be crystal clear on what this is, because it is so important. A benefits realization plan, or BRP, is the document that answers one simple question. Who's in charge of the benefits after the project team packs up and goes home? It formally gives someone ownership and defines exactly how you're going to measure and track the value long after the project is done. So with all this going on, how do you get an honest opinion on how you're doing? Well, that's where independent assurance comes in. The UK Treasury uses a gateway process, which is basically a series of neutral health checks at critical points in the project. It works on what's called the 3 lines of defense: management, oversight, and finally, independent audit. What the board gets is a simple, clear status: red, amber, or green. It's the brutal, honest truth about the project's health. And that, right there, brings us full circle. You see, the 5-case model isn't just a checklist of documents. It's a living, breathing cycle. The strategic case gives us our why. The economic case proves the value. The commercial case sets up the deal. The financial case lines up the funds. And, as we've just seen, the management case guarantees the delivery. They all have to work together. When you get all 5 of those cases aligned and humming in perfect harmony, you don't just have a business case anymore. You have something much more powerful. You have, and I'm quoting here, a robust, defensible, and high-confidence roadmap. And really, isn't that what every major investment needs? And that wraps up our journey through the 5-case model. Thank you so much for joining me. If this was valuable for you, please hit that subscribe button and join our community.